Okay, so by the way, in the PowerPoint, I have got some little info that's like on hidden slides of stuff that you might need to know. Okay, so just before we actually start, I'll explain a bit of that. So obviously the prerequisites to this before you do this course is level 2, Q-SYS level 2, Seervision 1, the online. Okay. The way you're going to pass, people are going to pass this class. There's no exam because you're going to be working in teams. Okay. So the way they pass is after this, a bit like Q-SYS Architect. There's an online exam. The online exam, it's not super easy, but I expect pretty much everyone to pass. The only thing I thought could happen is that it's going to be working in teams. As a teacher, you're going to need to make sure that everyone is getting exposure to everything. So what I found running it, I've run this a couple of times now. Sometimes you get one guy who's doing all the stuff on the computer and one other guy who's like testing the tracking and walking around. And that's okay. You've got to make sure, okay, guys, maybe swap over now on the next exercise or whatever. So if it gets to the end of the class and for some reason you think one person hasn't paid attention, you just think they're not going to be very good, what you need to do is just, tell them, look, you've done pretty well, but actually I'm not going to pass you, but I think you need to come back and do it again. And then just remove them from the roster, like as if they weren't at the class, and then they won't get access to the exam. But I really don't think that's going to happen very often. I think it's worse.
I think if we're like on top of like saying like, say if it's teams of 3, for example, one person doing one thing, make it clear that they have to swap.
Yeah, exactly. So I think we'll say that at the start. Okay. This is the Wi-Fi, and and then we're going to be doing obviously vision commissioning level 2. Okay. You all enjoyed level 1. It was a lot of fun. Any questions following level 1?
I didn't do level 1.
Do level 1. Yes. Right now. The basic agenda, guys, is like this. Okay, so we're going to start off with a demonstration downstairs, because obviously a lot of customers won't have actually ever seen a Seervision system other than in the videos and marketing and stuff like that. And also that's an opportunity for them to remind them about things from level 1, remind them of the basic concepts of like trigger zones, tracking zones, containers, just the fundamentals. That's only going to be like 15-20 minutes. And then we're going to come up here. We've got 2 servers. There's going to be 2 teams. Okay. I was thinking maybe Jasper and Aurelian, and then Sander and Jens, maybe. I don't really care.
Yeah.
Basically team Northern Europe, team Central Europe. It is a competition. No. And then we're going to work through these. So we're going to get connected. We're going to set up basic tracking. Okay, one team will be using this area and fighting with me for space, and the other team will be using the back wall. Okay. Making adjustments with, smoothness and dead bands, adding static view cameras with the whiteboards, doing some automation. So we've got some lights we're going to be controlling. We've got some sounds and music and stuff we're going to automate. Multiple presenters, and then adding in ACPR and auto framing.
Yeah, fun stuff.
So yeah, with that, shall we head downstairs for a little demo? All right, so everyone can see what we're doing. So we're going to do a little demo / recap first. Okay, so just a reminder to all of you, basically what the Seervision suite, what the Vision Suite is all about, right? So the fundamental parts of the Vision Suite are that it's built around the NC series cameras. Okay, so remember that all of the cameras can go to any destination at any time. And we don't really talk about that all the time, but it's actually a super important foundation for everything that comes on top of it, right? Which is the next level, which is obviously ACPR, right? So with ACPR, we can then automate switching of cameras and camera positions based on, of course, audio. So then with Seervision, what we're adding in is firstly presenter tracking, but also the really important thing is the ability to automate the whole system in a way that you haven't really been able to do much before, right? That kind of thing where you can just walk in, the lights come on, the audio changes, and the presenter can just worry about presenting, and they can walk around and everything just happens automatically is really, really important. Okay, so what we're going to do is just talk about this room. So in this room, for example, sorry, I clicked the wrong thing. In this room, we've got quite a few, we've got all of these different levels of technology. Okay, so right now, if I go and put the camera on screen, you're obviously going to see me. Okay, and that's pointing at me right now. Now, what we're doing in here is we're using currently ACPR to switch the camera to me when I'm speaking, but also it will switch to you guys if one of you wants to speak. So like Sander, for example, do you want to tell me what you had for breakfast?
Well, yeah, I didn't have a full English because I'm not an English bloke, apparently. So I just had like a nice omelette with ham and cheese. And
Sounds really good.
going on the side there. Yeah.
It's pretty healthy as well.
And then I love my croissant.
Very, very nice. Excellent work. So, you know, we've got ACPR controlling the switching cameras, and then we've got Seervision over here. Okay. So again, you guys, obviously, because this is train the trainer, right? I'm going to tell you a lot of things that you already know, but let's pretend you don't already know all these things. Okay. So I'm going to open up the Seervision UI here so we can see what's going on. So you want to be at this point kind of reminding people just the fundamentals of Seervision. Okay, so the first thing is, of course, you know, what it's actually seeing. So it's quite a good idea to have up on there the user interface. And then the first thing you can do is obviously you can talk about how it's tracking you. So like in this room, it does like a kind of half body track like this. But what I find is quite useful is you can recall a different container. You can have one already set up, right? And you can then say, look, you know, so obviously it's tracking, it has 18 points across the body. Talk about all that kind of stuff. And obviously point out that that's really different to lots of other tracking systems, right? That's not something that's like pretty typical. Of course, that means we all know you can like face the other direction and tracking just keeps on working and go through all that kind of basic introduction to Seervision, okay? But in your rooms, and that might be in the training room or it might be in a meeting room, whatever, as long as you can like cover all those topics, right? So what I then bring up is some slides that I had in the, I did it in this webinar. So basically, what are the kind of key bits of technology in Seervision that are like really important, okay? And firstly, you've got the actual way that it does tracking identification, okay? So you want to be telling people, so remember that Seervision is actually identifying each person kind of uniquely, right? So the fact that if I go back to this UI again, so obviously you can talk about the number that you've got in there. So you can say, look up here, there's a little number that represents me as an individual. Maybe get someone else to come up. So like Jasper, do you want to come up and we'll see what number you get?
Oh, it's a lower score.
Yeah. So, and you can obviously point out that it's, you know, it's not going to look at Jasper just because he's like arrived on stage, right?
I think I'm less human as well.
You are less human. Yeah, you are.
But no, we have the.
That's it. You can say that's the percentage that I'm human, and then obviously my unique ID number. And now in the slides, there's a little video. Okay, so there's a video here of Beatrice. You can do this live if you want. So you can say, look, she's got a unique number, and then other people are walking behind, walking in front, and obviously it keeps tracking her. Okay, you can do that yourself live, but sometimes it doesn't work. So it's really up to you. Risk averse you are.
We're gonna do that.
Yeah. Okay, so then the question is, all right, well, remember, how do we actually get tracking to begin? And because people have done level 1, you can like get questions. So you can be like, how do we actually start tracking? Someone might go, a trigger zone. And then you go, yes, a trigger zone. Okay, and then you can, you know, give them a quick refresher. So trigger zones, of course, they are used to start tracking, but fundamentally, all they're doing is they're telling Q-SYS how many people are in the zone, and they're telling Q-SYS when someone enters or leaves. You can use it to start tracking, and that's like 90% of what you might use it for. But actually, you can use it for anything you want. You can use that event completely independently of whether tracking is happening or not. And that's the real key thing that I think people need to think about. Is it's not just about tracking. It's about like event-based automation, right? And again, then give them a bit of context. You can come back here, you can show, oh, look, we've got a trigger zone over there, and that's, you know, doing one thing. You can show them if you want that you've got, you know, another trigger zone. So like over here, we've got one for the whiteboard, right, that does a camera switch. So you can kind of show them a few of those things, that it's not just about tracking, starting and stopping. Also point out again that it's totally fine to have a trigger zone that covers the whole area, right? You can totally have a trigger zone that does that, but it's maybe better, and you'll see upstairs that it's maybe more refined to have a trigger zone that's in a specific place, okay? And a lot of what you want to do in Seervision level 2 that it's hard to do in level 1 is that kind of more nuanced, subtle things. So in level 1, you can say, I'm going to draw a trigger zone, but you don't then spend half an hour thinking about the positions exactly and where it's going to avoid audience members' heads and things like that. But when you're here using the equipment, that's why we have the classroom time, right? Is that the people will learn that themselves. So we'll do a lot of that kind of thing. Mention about containers as well. So obviously a container is what? Yeah. What is it, Sander?
It's like a fixed shot.
Yeah, or well, it can be. There's a position container and a shot container.
Yeah.
So what's a position container?
Is that still for me to answer?
Anybody? Jasper?
Position container, that's basically a fixed shot. It's not strict.
Yeah. So a position container would be something like, like something like that. So it's going to move to a fixed position. It's just a camera preset, really, really basic. And then a shot container is obviously contains properties about the type of tracking, right? And again, people will know this because they've done level 1, but you can just spend a couple of minutes like doing it live, recalling a few different ones. You can obviously set up one that's like really stupid, which is kind of funny. So you can do something like really.
Oh, this is my bodge workaround for the until we got the static camera set up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, look, we can have a totally ridiculous one. Still tracking, just about. And I'm gone. So feel free to, show people like extreme use cases, right? Because we want people to properly understand it, not just see a kind of really slick version of it. And then, of course, we have the tracking zone. So Aurelian, what's the tracking zone do?
Basically, you define a zone where you are moving, and when you're getting out of it, it goes in a predefined position. The camera goes in a predefined position.
Exactly. So the tracking zone is going to notify Q-SYS when someone who is being tracked leaves.
When the presenter is walking.
Yeah, pretty much. So in this one, it's pretty straightforward. So we have a edge of a tracking zone right
A
there.
little bit further.
Just there.
Yeah.
There you are.
And you're in. Cool. Okay. So yeah, the fundamentals are pretty much this, right? Which is that PowerPoint, I've got too many windows open. So we have a trigger zone, typically activated. That person becomes the VIP, right? And then we're going to do a container recall, be tracking them. When they leave the tracking zone, we're going to stop tracking and the camera goes home, goes to a different position container. And then the last bit I want to show before and this will be in the videos as well, eventually, this bit I haven't done yet, is just how reminding people technically what's happening in the background with a Q-SYS system versus a Q-SYS system where you're adding Seervision, right? So we all know about a basic Seervision system. We've got the core, we've got the bridge, we've got a camera. And obviously the core is controlling the camera, the core is controlling the bridge, right? My laptop there. But then how do we add Seervision? So it's really simple, right? And this is the thing we need to reiterate. You can add it to like any Q-SYS system and it's going to ingest the video. It's then going to do the processing on it, decide what needs to happen, and it's controlling the camera directly. So that obviously means there's like much more fine control versus if it was just controlling stuff via the core. But then the key thing, again, is that we're getting all the trigger events from the server into the core, and the core is telling the server what containers to recall. And that's the important thing, right? Q-SYS remains what it always has been, which is it's the main decision maker, right? It's controlling everything. The server is just giving Q-SYS information. By the way, someone stepped over here, someone stepped over there. And then again, you could use Seervision and not do any tracking. You could just use it like as an optical sensor. It'd be very expensive. But that's the key thing, is that the tracking and the event data are not intrinsically like the same thing, which gives you lots of flexibility. So there you go. So that's the kind of thing you want to do at the start of Seervision level 2. Okay. All right, guys. So we both got Seervision servers and a Q-SYS core and lots of cameras and a microphone and all sorts of stuff. Okay. So we're going to have lots of fun playing around with all of that in our Seervision systems work. So as I said, you guys are going to be walking around this front area. This will be your tracking zone, if you like. You guys, it's going to be that whole wall. Okay? We've got whiteboards as well, so we can do all the things that you might do with Seervision. Now, on your desktop is a folder called Seervision Level 2, computer desktop. Yes. Let's open that up and take a look at it. Okay, should look like this, right? So firstly, let's open up this Q-SYS designer file.
Oh, but it's so much faster than my laptop.
It's like nothing on this PC.
Yeah.
I'm next. Okay. I've got this little building. It's getting late. You want?
Okay.
Oh, I've had drop for that. So
Okay. So guys, let's explain what we're doing in this file. All right. So we've got some basic hardware in there. There's like a core and a QIO and a touch panel. We're going to be adding obviously lots of cameras and other things. And at the top, we have this plugin section. So we've got the Seervision plugin and we've got ACPR as well, which we'll come to later on. Also got the Sennheiser one, so we can discover our. There's a bit about third-party control. We've got some stuff we're going to control over here. And then we have a section here for cameras, for routing, for your USB bridge. And then down the bottom, we've got some basic audio. So it's really just a mic coming to USB. And we've also
scroll.
Huh?
How do you do side scroll?
you push in the middle mouse button.
Okay.
So guys, we're going to be connecting to our Seervision servers. Okay, so of course we're going to need the Seervision discovery tool. But we have that in our folder. Okay, so can you go to the software section, open up Seervision discovery.exe. Should look a bit like this. It might ask you to allow it on the firewall, so just do that. See something like this come up here.
Yeah.
I just realized it also does dark mode. Dark mode. I've got your screen as well.
Ah, fair.
So 233, that's team 1, okay, team Northern Europe, and 127 is team Central Europe's server. Okay, so that's the one obviously right in front of you. Your server is actually in the cupboard, Aurelian, but you don't need to see it really. Now, guys, can you go to your server in Chrome? Yeah. Remember, you can also use Edge if you haven't got Chrome. Edge works just as well. And it might already have some stuff set up on it. It might already have some zones and things. So I think I did this on both of them. There's the user configs top right. There's a little button that looks like that. You have a blank config at the back there?
empty.
Empty. Okay, hit load on that. There, do the same at the front. And you've also got your second instance as well. So they're both 2-channel servers. So over the second channel, you can press /2 at the top, or you can click the /2 button. And remember, this is like a totally separate, it might as well be a different server. Now, just a quick reminder about how this works, right? So we've got the settings panel on the left, all of our video overlays, tracking controls, zone creation, trigger zones, tracking zones, and exclusion zones. Stream panel, controls in here. Oh, zoom speed. Okay, yeah.
There's also
The pen field.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the containers panel will create position and shot containers. So again, use this as just a second to remind people.
It's not.
Obviously, in the future, they might have done like Vision level 1, 6 months ago or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, we also have, of course, the operations server, which you can get to. Click on top right, your Seervision UI. You've got the operations server button. just a reminder, this is where you have information about the server, the software version of the Seervision suite. So like 74 in this screenshot. IP settings, okay. I think yours is on a static, yours is on DHCP. They probably should be on a static in a real install, I would think, or at least a reservation. Then you can configure your Penguin transportation unit, PTU. So yeah, that's where we hook up the camera. As in terms of the motor and the lens, basically. So telling it the motor and the lens. And then of course you've got the ability to reboot as well. You've also got licensing on the top right there. I think servers will arrive at customers without a license. And as we know,
30-day trial.
is there? Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So if you fire it up, it runs for 30 days
That's really smart.
and then it expires.
Okay, cool. Okay, so guys, this is the room. Okay, this is my highly technical CAD drawing that I drew in PowerPoint. So, red team, this is red team, your blue team. Okay, and yeah, like I said, you're going to have this part of the room. You're going to have the back part of the room, and there's lots of cameras, right? Lots of cameras to play with. So, make a note of this in your head or in real life. Blue team, your tracking camera is number 3. Red team, it's number 9. Okay. So we're going to want to start off with this exercise. Okay. Add a tracking camera to your design file. Connect it to your bridge via a router. We want to set a streaming mode to be multicast, and we want to check that we're getting that to the USB bridge. Then in Seervision, you need to add it as a PTU and also add your camera's stream main interface. Of course, you can find the camera's IP address on configurator. Okay, so guys, we are going to set up basic presenter tracking next. So this is obviously going to be this use case, okay? Single presenter, nothing too clever, single tracking camera. We need to have a trigger zone to start thing happening, okay? And when it leaves a tracking area, the tracking zone, I'm going to go back to a home position. So here's the version of this with forward. So you might want to have a trigger zone by a desk, maybe like that. You can see then we're calling the tracking container here. And you notice that the tracking, calling the container takes longer because he's moving around while it's zooming in, right? And it's complete. Now he's going to leave the tracking zone. Back to our home one. Now you guys at the back could just have a great big trigger zone, but maybe use one of these desks as like, you know, maybe use that desk as your sort of starting point. Like this is my lectern kind of thing. So guys, you're going to need to connect the Seervision plugin to your server. Okay, you need to have a home position container and a shot container in Seervision. You need to create trigger zone, tracking zone, and then tie it all together in the plugin.
Very happy.
Okay. Okay, so we've just finished the first exercise. We've done basic tracking. Second exercise, yeah, okay. We've finished the second exercise, basic tracking. We've got our position container, shot container, triggering zone, tracking zone, all linked up. Everyone's happy, yeah? We're all good.
Stay on track, dude.
Stay on track. Okay. So now we're going to play around a bit with tracking customization. Okay. So for this, I'm just going to borrow the first team's server because they're already pointing at me, and we can highlight a few little things. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to turn off the deadband. We're going to talk about that in a second. Just show you the basic result of smoothness being changed. Okay. So tracking smoothness is just the speed at which the camera reacts to you moving. Okay, so even if I do a really small movement here, I do still get a camera move, but it's quite like kind of slow and relaxed. Not that slow. Now, if we set smoothness all the way down, it's going to be like kind of jerky. Yeah, we can see it's quite fast. Like it's quite hard for me to escape. Sort of like a Terminator, just like. But yeah, it's like really, really jerky. So it's not very nice if you are making, you know, kind of like little movements. It's going to be kind of annoying. Have you just turned the deadband back on? In the trigger zone?
Yeah, it's in the trigger zone.
Oh, okay. Just turn it off again.
Yeah, of course.
So now you can see, obviously, like I can just make a tiny movement and the camera's going haywire. Okay, so Jasper, if you could knock up the smoothness all the way up.
Where's the? There you
All the way, yeah, full smooth. Okay, so now it's like super nice and graceful. But actually, if I just walk at a kind of like normal speed, I'm almost able to leave the zone, right? And still, if I make a little movement, it's still gonna move the camera. It's just gonna do it slower. So then we turn on the deadband, right? Glamorous assistant Jasper, and now I can move within that green box, and it won't move at all until I leave the green box. Okay. Nice. So now nothing happens until I. Oh. Nice. Okay, and there's a small deadband, which is basically no deadband. Now, one thing you can do, which is kind of fun, is have a really low smoothness all the way down, and then quite a wide deadband. You make it a bit taller as well. Yeah, make it a bit wider. So, I feel like it's taking the mickey. Not wide enough. So now it's almost like not tracking, but actually when I leave the deadband, it's going to move quite fast because of the low smoothness. And that's like quite, not everyone's going to want that, but some people will want to not even show that there's tracking happening until it like has to happen, right? To keep you back in frame. So you're quite happy moving around and it's just not doing anything. But then as you start to leave, it will then bring you back in. And this is all subjective, right? So this is something you need to speak to the customer about and find out what they want, or don't tell them and just set it the way you like it. If you give them too many options, they'll probably do something kind of crazy. So we're just gonna have a little experiment with that. Okay. So let me come back to the PowerPoint here. Okay. And just have a little play around with the deadband and the tracking smoothness. Walk up, get tracked, and see the result for yourself. Okay, just to spend a couple of minutes doing that. And one other thing you should be aware of that you can customize, and it's kind of hard to see, is this guy here. Okay, so when you edit a trigger zone, you have the ability to change the enter threshold. Right? And you can see this when you edit the trigger zone. So the enter threshold, guys, is the amount of time you have to stay in the zone for the enter event to trigger.
Yeah, true.
Okay, so it's not like a delay. There is actually a delay in the. There's a delay in the plugin still there.
No, I was just about to ask why that's
gone now.
That's gone. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was did it to be kind of redundant. So there's no delay in the plugin. Call that. There's threshold in there. So that means that if you have the potential for someone to quickly walk in the zone and out again, you can increase the threshold to stop that. And give that a try. Okay, chaps. So it's time for the next use case, okay, which is single presenter plus a static view camera for your whiteboard. Okay, I realise your whiteboard maybe needs to rotate. So the goal here is that we are being tracked in the same way we already are. When we approach the whiteboard, we're going to switch to a different camera, which is not controlled by Seervision. That camera is just a normal Q-SYS camera. The Seervision is going to control where it points using the plugin. It's also going to control when it switches to it. And you're going to use the enter event for a second trigger zone, switch to it. And then we're going to use the leave event of the same trigger zone to switch back to the tracking camera. So that was what we were saying about leave events, right? So yeah, just remember a static view camera does not have not get interacted with by Seervision. So hang on, I just went to the wrong slide somehow there. That happened.
No, I just want to stay on track.
Stay on track. Go on. Okay. So it's like this, right? So the static view camera, it's just a normal Q-SYS camera. It's not talking to Seervision at all. But trigger, enter, and leave events are going to have us switching to and away from it. Now, we've got a camera for this job, okay, which is the whiteboard. Okay. Number 6 and number 4.
5 minutes.
Just as a reminder, in case anyone needs a reminder, you're going to need to link your MediaCast router to the plugin with a code name.
Very good.
Done it already.
Easy.
Oh. And then you're going to need to link your static view camera via its code name and put in some details here.
MediaCast.
Let's clarify a few things here, okay? So, firstly, you've got the persons column, okay? Now, the persons column, often slightly misunderstood, is the number of people in the trigger zone after the event happens, okay? So when you have your leave event, right, this would be someone leaves the zone and there's one person left. But for your camera, when you leave the whiteboard zone, there's going to be 0 people left, right? So you need to make sure your leave event and then you have 0 here, and that's how many people remain, okay? Now, remember, you need to have Seervision switching the cameras as well, right? So that is all going to be done using, firstly, these numbers over here. So you need to tell it what MediaCast router inputs and outputs you have for each camera. But then also on the tracking cameras page, on the right-hand side, you've got a video switch button, okay? And that will switch the cameras, not just recall the containers. So make sure you've got video switch turned on and you've got the MediaCast router stuff set up correctly. Anyway, we've got one more job to do, okay, before lunch, which is this. All right, we want to add in some room automations, okay? So we've got an on-air light. You've got an on-air light? Yeah. You've got an on-air light on the back of this, okay? That's connected to your PDU on output 4. And in your design file, you've got a little section there. So let me go to the design file here. You can see we've got this section over here. So you don't have to worry about how this works. You can just wire in control pins to turn that sign on and off. Press the button, of course. Okay. So what we would like is it to be on air when you're tracking, not when you're not.
Okay. Yeah.
Background music playing when you're not tracking, when the room's idle, but when tracking starts, you turn off the background music. Yeah. And play locked-on.mp3, which is in your folder when tracking starts, which won't get annoying at all. And then on the UCI, we'd like a button to go home and a button to disable all the trigger zones and enable all the trigger zones. You can turn basically the whole thing off on the UCI. So if you want to disable tracking and go home, you can. I did this before. I linked the stop tracking button and then linked that to like the manual recall for the fallback event. But actually, it turns out that this container, you know, the home container, contains stop tracking inside it. So you can actually literally just put that button on the UCI and that will stop tracking and go home with one button if you want. And then, yeah, the tracking pin is really useful for lots of things, as you've seen, okay? Although we'll see later on, it isn't going to cover everything we want to do. We will have to use a few other things as well. Okay, we'll do one last thing, a quick thing before lunch, okay? Which is this. So we need to know about some constraints with Seervision, okay? So I'm sure you all know there's no distinction between real people and images of people. So, for example, presentation slides, etc. And there's also no depth information for trigger zones. So we've already seen this back there. So
I guess we get in trouble when the window cleaner comes, right? I guess we get in trouble when the window cleaner comes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, although window cleaners are real people too. So if you have a trigger zone like this, somebody walking in there, as far as Seervision is concerned, that's exactly the same as somebody coming in there, right? It doesn't really know or care how big they are on screen. Now that's really a problem for system designers, right? As I see it, because like you said, if your camera's too low, then it's super easy for people to just walk in front of it. But also like the room layout. So you guys at the back, you know, we're coming up, walking up to you, and we're getting in the whiteboard zone. But if this was a real life place, you know, there'd be a bit of a, you'd only come up here, you would come there. So anyway, it's most of those things are kind of resolved naturally by the position of cameras, so that's probably okay. Now the people on screen thing, this here's an example of like a really worst case scenario. Okay, so I've got a trigger zone over the screen, and I've got people on the screen. It's a video of people walking down the street. Okay, so the statue being recognized as a person, by the way. We turn on the trigger zone, and all sorts of nonsense starts happening. So obviously, this is something you'd like to avoid.
It's kind of like interesting.
Incredible video find to use that.
Yeah. So we obviously don't want that to happen, right? So that's why
Humans.
that's why God invented exclusion zones, right? So exclusion zones, these something very specific, and we need to make sure we don't like assume what they do. The outcome is that you put them over a screen and it stops the screen triggering things. But specifically, it will make the trigger zone. So here we've got a big trigger zone. This exclusion zone will prevent people from triggering the trigger zone if they are entirely within the exclusion zone. Okay? Now this is good because it means somebody can walk along and they have their top half in the exclusion zone because they're in front of the screen. But the exclusion zone doesn't affect them because they're not entirely inside the exclusion zone. But people on screen will be entirely inside it. Okay, so you'll still see people, you'll still see their skeletons, but they'll have a red box around them, which means that they, you know, are not going to be trapped. So it still knows they're there, but it won't act on them. So when you draw these, something to be careful of, if you're really neat and make it perfectly lined up with the screen, you know, when the camera moves and the zone shift just a little bit, you might find that you still get people on screen triggering stuff because they're slightly outside the exclusion zone. So I tend to just make them a bit bigger than they need to be. And that's still okay because a normal presenter will obviously be, you know, well outside of it. But yeah, just something to be aware of, which you're going to have to deal with when we do multi-presenter after lunch, because you're going to have a trigger zone covering the projector. Okay. Any questions? Shall we go to the cafe?
Definitely.
Okay.
1 hour later.
All right, guys, are we all ready to continue? Yeah. So next up, multiple presenters. Okay. How can we make it so that when there's two people or more than one person, precisely, we do something slightly different. Okay. So obviously, if the camera was tracking and it's totally zoomed in, someone else could walk up, but you wouldn't even know because the camera can't see them. So that is why we really need the conductor camera, right? That's why the conductor camera is important, because that is going to let us see the whole stage all the time, not just when we're, you know, on a home position.
I think he'll give us one. It might be the NC110.
What?
No, he was asking which one to use.
Continue.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll tell you.
You can ask
Yeah,
me.
yeah. So the way this actually ends up, some stupid sign. The way this actually works is like this, right? So you have your conductor camera, and that is going to the Seervision server, 2-channel server. So we're going to use that second instance, right? And you can have Seervision control it, but it's not going to be used for tracking, right? We're not going to be doing tracking on it. And then basically we can draw a great big trigger zone there, or we could actually draw lots of different trigger zones if we want as well. But we're going to do a big trigger zone, and then the core will know about that. But it will recall containers on the tracking camera. So the tracking camera might zoom in or zoom out, depending on what you want to have happen. So here is an example which you saw on the videos, but I'll play it again. So there's me. This is a big trigger zone, this purple one. Yeah. Then Jasper walks in. It then records a zoomed out shot on the tracking camera while Jasper is there. That's what we're talking about. So then Jasper goes, and then it goes back, it just records the tracking container again. Okay. So you're going to be using in static view. Hold on. There we go.
Number 7.
Number 7. Okay, you're going to use number 7. And you guys are going to use number 8, which is unplugged because I unplugged it earlier.
Yeah.
So what we have to do is this is going to involve a few steps. Okay. Wait, I haven't told you to go yet. What you're going to need to do is add your conductor camera in the second instance of Seervision. You're going to need to add it as a PTU and as a video stream. Okay. You also need to add the conductor camera in the plugin. Now be careful because your camera 2 is the static camera. And I think if you add a conductor camera, that might change. So just pay attention to that. Okay. Set up a trigger zone for the whole stage. And you basically want to recall a wider position container and play an MP3 when multiple presenters are on stage, and resume tracking when it goes back down to one person. Okay. And I'll be hovering around, obviously, if you need. So you go. So I might do something like this, right? So I could say presenting, like it is tracking. Yeah. Turns presenting on. But you only reset it when you get fallback triggered or something.
Yeah, maybe fallback complete.
Yeah, well, yeah, one of them.
Yeah.
And then this, you can say, so this is, is presenting.
Yeah.
With that, you can plug into the on-air light, right? The trigger zone enable, disable thing.
Yeah, because that's obviously turning off when we get multi-presenter, which
Right, exactly.
true.
So this is the thing. When you have multi-presenter, you're still presenting, but you're not tracking. So your is tracking LED becomes a bit misleading for what we will use it for. So something like this is better, where is tracking turns it on, but only fallback turns it off when everyone's gone.
Yeah.
Right. For example. So I think this might end up in my user components. It's just a little thing I can quickly wire up. Yeah. Okay. We're going to talk about one last thing before we move on, which is backing up and restoring your Seervision configuration and your plugin configuration. Okay, because obviously that's quite useful if you're going to do one room and then you want to maybe do it again and again. And there's 2 areas in the plugin where you can do this. Okay, you guys can try this out now if you want. Firstly, you've got this one here. It's on the setup page of the plugin. Seervision server database. Okay, so this is that instance of Seervision, the trigger zones, the tracking zones, the containers, all of that stuff. If you hit backup, save it onto your core's files section. Okay, so it'll be in Core Manager under Audio Files. You can find that JSON. It's basically a JSON file that it downloads. And then, of course, you can restore that to a different instance of the server or a different server entirely. And you can obviously move it from site to site. Well, now the other one is the plugin setup. So this is the plugins configuration in terms of, what's selected in the plugin and what buttons are on and off. So if you press back up on that, it just saves JSON string into this text box. And then you can just copy that and paste it into a different plugin. And you'll get actually like the same thing. Okay, so guys, the next thing we're going to talk about is using Seervision and ACPR together. Of course, we just did this, but I wasn't pressing record. So, go with it. Pretend the last 5 minutes never happened. Okay. So, of course, this is where we're going to have ACPR controlling cameras with the microphone, and we're going to use Seervision to control the presenter side. And the reason this is going to work quite well is because we have we have responsibilities between the two systems. We're going to be using Seervision for the presenter, and we're going to be using ACPR for the audience. And those two things are not going to overlap. There's not going to be any confusion about what camera is for what. So when the system is designed, we'll have, like we have here, static cameras, tracking cameras, conductor cameras, and the audience cameras are going to be something different. Similarly, the actual control of the system is going to be the same. So the ACPR is only going to be controlling the router, the MediaCast router, when the audience is speaking. Seervision is going to be controlling it when presenters are speaking. Okay. The way this actually works is because the plugins are communicating with each other. They're going to talk together. They're going to know when people are speaking in the presenter area or speaking in the audience area, and either one can switch the camera, but which one is in charge is going to be changed based on where people are speaking. So the result is going to look like a bit like this. So we're going to have a microphone. Here's a Sennheiser microphone, and then that's going to be picking up a presenter. And when that person's speaking, we're switching to this camera, that's a Seervision controlled camera. Now someone in the audience is speaking, we're going to switch to a preset camera in the audience. So that camera is controlled with ACPR. Then this person here speaks, we switch back to them, and of course they can move around because it's Seervision controlled. Okay. It seems pretty logical. Now in the room we have here, we got these cameras. So red team, you actually have two if you want, primary and secondary camera, but for now, let's just use this one, camera 2. Yeah, that one. But you're pointing at something else like what? Camera 2. And you guys, it's one right above your head, camera 10. Okay, so that's going to be for the audience. And all we're going to do is we're going to set up a very simple ACPR system with 3 zones in the audience. So for you guys, it's just going to be this desk, this desk, and this desk. So that's going to be the 3 areas. Same thing for you guys, except it's obviously the other side. You know what I mean? So for you, like, so, okay. And just think about this in ACPR, when we set this up, the angles that we want to use from the microphone, just pick the angles between the desks. So you don't need very many. You need like that angle, and the ones on the side. Okay. Now, you can help Anthony out with all the just explaining what we're doing in ACPR, yeah? But it's not going to be terribly complicated. So guys, before we start doing anything, no, I was going to ask. Guys, before we start, we are going to be disconnecting Seervision for now. Okay, so I want us to just set up ACPR on its own. Okay, so disconnect the Seervision plugin from the router, link ACPR to the router. You're going to need to add your microphone, the IP address of the microphone, and then just set up 3 audience positions.
Test 1, 2, 1, 2, test 1, 2, 2, test.
Okay, so we're all good with ACPR basic setup, yeah? We've got the 3 zones, we've got the microphone following us around. Got it. Now, what we need to do is talk about how do we bring Seervision into this. Okay, and there's a few little steps here. I'm going to explain it, and you'll find that as I'm explaining how all these things interconnect, to be honest, it sounds like it might be quite complicated, but it isn't. Trust me, when you do it, you're like, oh, there's just a few specific things we need to add in to link them together. And the first one is this. So SV zones in ACPR. You probably won't see this just yet. No. There's a property in ACPR called Seervision integration. Will turn on. And that will add in some extra controls. And this is the first one, SV zones. Now what you will do here, you will create an ACPR zone, which is for the presenter. Okay. So for example, that could be, you know, from the microphone, it could be like 270 all the way to 90 in this situation. This whole front half of the microphone, this is where the presenter is going to be. And then all you have to do, you don't have to do anything else. You just press SV. That means that when someone speaks in that zone, ACPR is going to say to Seervision, okay, now you're in charge of the camera. That's the first bit. How does this actually work? How do these things communicate? Well, you know, I said that we have ACPR and we have Seervision, and they can both control the router. That's true, but actually only Seervision is directly connected to the router. Seervision is be connected directly in the way we've been doing with codename. Okay. ACPR is going to talk to Seervision. Seervision plugin is kind of like the gatekeeper, kind of like the security guard between ACPR and the camera router. So, what does it send to the Seervision plugin? Well, it tells the Seervision plugin if the presenter is in Seervision zone, that SV zone, or if it's the audience. So if it's people speaking in the audience, it tells Seervision, this is the camera I want you to use. Okay, and then Seervision is going to decide whether to pass that on or not. Router. Make sense? Yes. Okay, good. Now, how does Seervision decide whether to pass that on? Well, there's a button that we might have already seen on the MediaCast router page. You can set it to Seervision mode or ACPR mode. Now, if it's in Seervision mode, ACPR is just ignored. ACPR will be sending data to Seervision. It's just like to the hand, don't care, I'm in charge of these cameras, and it's just showing the presenter. So obviously here, it might be switching between any of your three cameras. It could go to the conductor camera, static camera, tracking camera, depending on what you've configured. And you can see here what source Seervision wants to send. But if we put it into ACPR mode, it works a bit differently. So in order to explain this properly, I made a flow chart. I didn't know what else to do. So this flow chart is just going to explain how these things work. And it's really, like I said, actually quite straightforward. So the first question is, what mode have you got set in the plugin, ACPR or Seervision? Like I said, if it's in Seervision mode, easy. Seervision controls the router. End of story. Thank you very much. If we set it to ACPR mode, then we check, is the SV zone, center zone, ACPR, is that active right now? If it is, if the presenter is in the SV zone, back to Seervision controlling the router again. And so even though you said ACPR is in charge, ACPR then says, yeah, but they're speaking in the SV zone. So we're still having Seervision controlling it. Okay. So the only time ACPR is controlling the camera is when you're in ACPR mode, the presenter is not speaking, the audience is speaking, and ACPR controls it. Easy, right? Any questions? Okay. Good. Here's a picture of some buttons. I've actually forgotten what these look like. So these are the ones in Seervision. This is the SV zone in ACPR. So guys, all you really need to do in Designer to access this is you need to change the Seervision, the ACPR properties to enable Seervision integration. Okay, so can we do that now? Turn on Seervision integration, and it's going to want to have the code name, your Seervision plugin. Of course, you can add Seervision plugin properties. We're going to reconnect Seervision to our router, firstly. Seervision is back connected to the router. We're going to do what we just did, connect ACPR to Seervision, use the code name. Fine, in the ACPR plugin, you also need to choose the router in the plugin itself when you open the plugin up. Yeah, so you can just choose Seervision there as well. So obviously, normally you wouldn't have two systems in the same room.
With voice lines as well.
But amazing work making that actually work. That's very good. Wait for cool. Okay, guys, we're very close to just being totally done now. You can see how we set that up. Okay, obviously we can make improvements to the ACPR. the angles and all the rest of it, that's a different training course. But we can see that linking it to Seervision, pretty straightforward. So, just so you're aware, ACPR now supports more microphones than it did in the past. Okay, sure, MXA 920 is now supported ACPR, as I know you're aware. Okay, and it works just like a TCC2 in terms of the angles. It's exactly the same inside the plugin. Okay. Now, guys, you might have noticed these controls on the right-hand side of your tracking camera page or your conductor camera page. Yeah. Some of you have already tried messing around with them. It's next to the video switch button. This allows you to change the mode of MediaCast router from ACPR to Seervision when trigger event occurs. Okay. So obviously you might want to have manual control over this. You might want to have the option for presenters to say, I'm going to allow audience questions or I'm not. Like ACPR, basically enable or disable. You're just switching between ACPR and Seervision on here. And one use case might be that when the presenter first comes up to here, as soon as they stand here, everything goes into Seervision mode. ACPR is effectively bypassed in terms of camera routing. Okay? And the presenter can talk, and if the audience are chatting away, doesn't matter, everyone's going to see the presenter. And then you might have on the touch panel, for example, this button says allow these questions. And then when that happens, then people in the audience can speak and they'll be seen on screen and everything. Okay? You could, of course, just leave it in that mode all the time. That's also fine. But just be aware that that means if it's pointing at the audience and the presenter comes up here, they won't be seen until they speak. They have to speak to bring control back to Seervision, which is probably fine. Like I said, that's how it works downstairs. But it's just something to be aware of. You could, though, do this. You could actually use a trigger zone to change this mode manually. So you could say, when tracking first begins, set it to SV mode. And maybe when you press a button on the touch panel, it changes. Maybe when we go to the whiteboard, we change it to SV mode. And when fallback happens, it goes to ACPR mode. I'm just making stuff up. You could see how you might want to use that. But be aware that this is not necessary. You don't have to use this. Okay, it's not vital, but it gives you an extra level of automation. So we're going to look at that. We're also going to look at auto framing. Okay, we're going to add even more controls to ACPR with auto framing integration. So every NC series camera now supports auto framing and face detection. Has anyone already seen this before? Okay, Jackass, yeah. I'm actually using this right now just to for this recording of this ACPR section that I'm doing. So I just have camera 5 pointing at me. I'm actually just using auto framing to very basic following of me like that. Okay. It's not really meant for that. It's not really meant for following presenters. That's Seervision, right? But we are going to use it for zooming in on the audience and getting a really good audience shot. So what you can do is you can enable per zone auto framing on your cameras, control, speed, the padding, etc. So I'd like you to have a play around with that as well. To do that, you need to enable auto framing. So guys, can you try this? Okay. Here's the last exercise. So guys, here we go. Let's give this a go. All right.
Okay. Oh. 10 minutes.
Guys, we've done. You guys have done, I think. Yeah. So we've done loads of stuff, right? We've done all these different tracking scenarios. We've done basic tracking, adding in the whiteboards. We've done multiple presenters, looking at exclusion zones, conductor cameras, all the different ways you can use those. And then, of course, adding ACPR to all of that, which you can see isn't too tricky, assuming your ACPR is all together. So you're basically level 2 certified, okay? But there is actually an assessment on the training website. go and do the assessment. There's 10 questions. Any website. Okay, on your dashboard, you'll find those. And then, of course, you can celebrate. There's one last thing, though. So, as you guys are distributors and you work with the customers and the integrators, okay, we want to be making sure that we are being smart when we're designing these systems, when we're working with the customers. Because what we've looked at here, these are our kind of 4, I guess you could say, like certified use cases. Okay? We've looked at all the different things we could do with Seervision, and we've said, well, we can do loads of different things. Let's look at what people really want to do and then expand upon that. So these are the things: tracking, adding in the whiteboard, presenters, and adding in ACPR to all of that. Now, of course, we're going to find that people want to add in other bits and pieces around that framework, but that's fundamentally what we're looking at. But of course, we're going to get people asking about things like visible rooms. So just be aware, we haven't covered divisible rooms in this training, obviously. But divisible rooms are totally doable by the plugin and the system as it is today. It's been designed to do that. The challenge with divisible rooms is it could be really simple. It could be like this, where you have two tracking systems. When the rooms combine, one tracking system, and you use one camera to cover a wider space. Right? That's pretty easy. You've basically got 2 versions of the room. And then you get into more rooms. You know, if you have a 3-way divisible room, you've got more room configurations. You add in ACPR to that. Obviously, you can see that it could get really complex. So what we're asking for is, if you're getting customers asking for divisible rooms or other rooms that are sort of outside those first 4 cases, don't say you can't do it or anything like that, because we probably can, but bring it to us. So you guys, you'll be speaking with Alien, I guess. You guys will come to Jack for any of the pre-sale stuff. Let's work together on it, look at the system, and we can advise and give our opinion on if we think this is something we want to pursue or not. And you know what we like. We like to say yes as much as possible. So it's just something we want to be involved in, so we can also build up a picture of what customers really want from these more spaces. We are also looking at doing a Seervision level 3, cover divisible rooms and other crazy ideas. Any other questions on?
Is that room configuration tab?
Great question. Yes, it is. So let me just give you a little sneak preview. So in the plugin, we have room configurations. Okay? And you have the option to change that. Top of each section, you can change the room configuration. So the idea here, going back to this, you can have the plugin set up with 2 tracking cameras, basically. So here's one tracking camera controlling that. Here's another tracking camera, 2 instances. But then you can change the room configuration, and one of the tracking cameras just essentially gets turned off. All the trigger zones are not in anymore. And the other one now has a wider tracking zone. You can switch on a different tracking zone. And you can just do this by flipping from room configuration 1 to room configuration 2. All open or closed. 2 configurations of the room as a whole.